Welcome, everyone. Today, we're going to have a really fun conversation about a topic that we're all pretty familiar with. We've got a really great set of panelists today, and we're going to swap some stories about fixing up sites that we didn't build ourselves, and hopefully learn a lot and have a fun conversation. So let's get started. All right, so here are all of our panelists. I'd love for all of you to introduce yourself. David, do you want to go first?
Absolutely, thank you. My name is David Wolfpaw. I've been working with WordPress since 2008, and I started the company FixUpFox, which is a website maintenance service, in 2015. So I've been managing other people's websites for quite a while.
Hi everyone, my name is Sergey Leongardt. I'm co-founder and chief technology dog at WEBDOGS. We've been in business for about 20 years, and we've been focusing exclusively on WordPress since about 2010. So have many different situations and customers that we have to deal with over the years.
Hey, I'm Ellis, LaMay. I'm the WordPress practice director at AmericanEagle.com. I'm thrilled to be here today. I work with our sales teams and production teams quite frequently, and I'm often on the opening of conversations with prospects and clients who are often coming to us with site speed issues. So I have a lot of those conversations all the time, and then I work with our teams to clear them up for our clients.
Hi, I'm Jessica Lyschik. I'm a front-end developer at Greyd, and I've been working on client websites for about 17 years and also did quite some performance optimizations. And yeah, that's it.
That's awesome. I'm so glad to see y'all here. It's going to be such a great conversation. This is a situation that we all have found ourselves in all the different ways that we all work all the time. So, and I think whenever this happens, one of the first things we have to think about is how we even identify how to start. So David, when you're getting a new website that's been performing poorly, what are the first areas you typically focus on, and how do you prioritize what to improve?
The first thing I do with every new client that I onboard is I perform a general website audit. So this is not just for the sites that clearly have issues that need to be solved, but just for all sites. There might be things that I won't see just by visually looking at the site. A tool that's very helpful for me with that is Lighthouse, and then there's a few others that I use that I'm sure we'll go over later. But I try to do things like look for general SEO issues that I might see, general development issues, for instance, if there's broken JavaScript on the site, something like that. And then I try to click through everything on the site, see if there are any broken links, see if there are any accessibility issues that I can see. And I have a long checklist that I go through. And I try to ensure that I'm going through that and taking notes at the same time, because it's also something valuable to give to the client, because they don't always see the kinds of changes that we make when we start. So I think that's an easy win to say, like, here's a lot of things that I fixed on your site for you.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I was watching Ellis nod along. So is that really common for you as well, Ellis, in your situations when you're talking to clients and they're bringing sites to you?
Absolutely. Yeah. And I would say, just for me in kind of my daily world, there's sort of a fork in the road with this question, because there's times when I have back-end access to the site and I can do auditing like David. Then there's other times where I don't yet have access and somebody's coming to us wanting to know, can we improve it? And it's a little bit more of a investigative kind of detective game at that level. It's actually really fun. But without getting too far ahead of myself, we do a lot of auditing. I would say that a lot of the times as we're going through that, I'm kind of looking to get a feel for if the speed issues are the result of maybe just somebody not following best practice because they didn't know better. So I'm looking for things like a 30 megabyte video that's crammed into the hero section of a site, or large unoptimized images. There's a lot of low hanging fruit like that I feel like can often be cleared up very quickly. Where I start to get concerned is when actually all of those things seem fine, because then it tells me that there's probably some deeper rooted issue in the application or on the server or somewhere else. But that's generally how the process starts, is with some auditing and deep digging.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I think that I would also be really worried if I saw that everything that could be a low-hanging fruit is all fine, then it becomes a far more complicated problem.
Mm-hmm.
Jessica, as you've gone through these kind of situations, I'm sure multiple times, obviously, like David had mentioned, there's Lighthouse, but what are some other tools that you find yourself sort of reaching for in your experience as a front-end developer looking at this kind of situation?
I think another interesting tool is web page test. I often use this because it has a very detailed, it shows you very detailed results of what's going on the website. And I think that's a bit, for someone who's just starting out, it's a bit of a hard one to get. But yeah, generally, Google PageSpeed is also a very convenient one because over the years, it improved very well, showing not just these red, yellow, green system, but is now also adding actual suggestions what to improve on the site, even specifically for WordPress.
Right, totally. And it's really amazing to see how these tools have been responding to the complexities of websites and their performance issues, especially recently, I think. But when there are so many different complex issues, I feel like it's really hard sometimes to decide where to really focus your efforts and your energies. Sergey, as you've come across situations like this, how do you decide how to allocate resources when you're dealing with a new inherited site that might not be doing so well?
So we usually try to go after low-hanging fruit, things like large images, large videos that Ellis mentioned. We also look at the hosting. That's one of the first things we do. If somebody is hosting on a cheap cPanel host, not on a WordPress optimized host, that's the first thing we recommend. Okay, you got to move to a better hosting solution. And we also usually propose to clients, let's start with a small number of hours where, 5, 10, 20 hours, depending on the size of the website and the type of the client. We say, okay, we have a whole checklist. We're going to go through it. We're going to identify some issues. We're going to solve some issues. And there's going to be some result. And then once we get past through that, then we can talk about long-term and, any other improvements we can make.
Yeah, I agree with a lot of that. I would say just to kind of add to that, some of the stuff that I'm often looking for when I get into sites and I'm trying to feel out what the speed issues are is I look to see how many plugins there are. And I know that seems like kind of an obvious one, but it's often a very frequent culprit of speed issues. And then getting more specific, one of the things I'll find, I'd say at least 1 out of 3 sites is I'll find a site will have a very popular page builder plugin installed on it, right? One of the probably top 5 or 10. But then the client has like 5 or 6 or 10 extensions for it also installed. And so what I'll find is this application is just bloated. They don't need all that. They maybe installed an extension so they could get some little widget, but didn't know that they could do the same thing with an extension that was already installed. So I'm basically, in that context, I'm looking for ways to trim the fat and eliminate dependencies that just don't need to be there because they can be provided some other way. Because my theory is if I can lighten the load, that's going to help speed things up. It's going to prevent collisions between plugins and so on. So that's a pretty big one for me.
And I also think, to piggyback a bit off what Ellis said, that not only am I looking to trim the fat on plugins that clients might have installed, but sometimes it makes it easier to maintain the websites over time. So I've gone into a client's website and see that, at some point in the past, they decided we need to put a contact form on our site and we don't know which plugin to use. So they've downloaded 5 different plugins to try out. And then I look and I'm like, okay, which plugin is actually using the contact form? I've even seen, where they go, I'll say, they use Gravity Forms for their contact form page, but Contact Form 7 for their newsletter sign up and Ninja Forms for their, jobs page, something like that. So whenever I see something like that, we try to find, what works the best for that client and then condense everything to that, because I have not yet found a situation there where they need to have all of those different contact forms going at once, as one example. similar to the page builders, I've also seen where they go like, oh, well, we built this one. We shouldn't just be naming companies to like make it seem like I dislike them, because the tools work great, but you don't need page builder A to build one page and page builder B to build a different page on your site. It reduces cognitive overhead as well. Not just that it makes it quicker and easier to load the pages with fewer things loading, but it's a lot easier to not have to figure out where do we go to, change this specific page here, and why does this specific other page, function differently.
Yeah. So that's really interesting that you talk about cognitive overload. I think that ties really well into, figuring out how do you even communicate the benefits of doing what you want to do to the client. So when you're talking to different clients about what you need to do in order to improve these sites, how do y'all manage the client expectations? How long something's going to take and what kind of actual impact certain things will have on the performance of their website. Jessica, how's that been something you've handled in the past?
So I once had a client that needed a certain plugin for her website, and there was no real replacement for it because she had built up around this plugin specifically, and it was causing the major performance issues. And what I did, I optimized everything around it, gave her various suggestions what she could do better, like get a better hosting and various other things. But then I said, well, it's not going to happen that we reach like the green area in Google PageSpeed, for example, because of that plugin. But if you need it, well, then that's a compromise we have to make at this point. And I think clear communication on like what's possible and what's not is totally important. And especially if it's functionality that the client cannot get rid of at some point.
Yeah, those are good points. I think speaking for myself, I find there's kind of two scenarios that play out. Sometimes I'm speaking with a client who, frankly, they have kind of unrealistic expectations because they don't know what they don't know, right? And they're kind of just making up theory on the fly and thinking something should go a certain way, and we know better as technologists. In that sense, I always try to take a very gentle kind of educational approach with the client, because obviously telling someone that they're just wrong is not an effective way to get through to somebody, but rather kind of showing them, information, how things work, and just trying to educate them in the process. That can go a long way. The other scenario I find is that sometimes clients want something that's just not quite feasible. Like, they will come to us with a site that is slow, it's suffering from performance issues, and they actually don't put that much emphasis on it, and they don't see it as an issue. But their request is to actually develop further on top of the site and build additional functionality and so on. And in that context, it's a conversation around, hey, like, let's clean up some of this technical debt you have first before you invest in it further, because it's going to make your investment actually get some ROI. The last thing you want to do is build into a site that has a wonky foundation, because like anything, you're going to suffer from some rework eventually. So I would say those are the two different kinds of conversations I end up having, at least on a weekly basis.
We had once a client that came in and used Google.com as a benchmark for how fast they want their website to work. So managing client expectations and educating the client is, I think, where we can make sure that they're asking for something realistic.
Yeah, in my own experience, education is such a core component of working with clients on any kind of project, but especially when you're trying to improve performance and, help them fix something that they might not even understand how deeply broken it might be. And not only are you helping them understand the current situation, but you find yourself empowering them to make better decisions later. And also, of course, establishing yourself as a trustworthy partner, which I think is a really important part of client relationships. When things like that happen, especially like what Jessica was talking about, a piece of functionality that they just cannot give up, or some other challenge that happens. How do you navigate that? How do you navigate it, especially with people who don't have that technical background, who may not understand why something is not possible? How do you educate them about that?
I try to let my clients know, especially when onboarding them, but also throughout the process, that I can try to provide a level of description and knowledge of what's going on their site on a sliding scale. Because I'll tell them, some of my clients just say, my shopping cart is broken, fix it. and and that's perfectly acceptable. I'll go, here we go, fixed it, done. But I also let them know, I can try to explain to you that your shopping cart was broken because there was a bug on the website that didn't make it work. Or I can go deeper and say their shopping cart wasn't working because there was some JavaScript that wasn't loading properly. Or I can go deeper and say it wasn't loading properly because this other plugin was causing it to not work, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Go down deeper and deeper into what level of understanding they want. I try to treat that as a way to empower the client so that they can be more knowledgeable in the future if they want to have an idea of what's going on. But also, again, my job is to focus on the website. Their job is to focus on their business. Some clients just go, cool, I'm glad it's working again, and they're done.
Yeah, I think it's important to also see if the client is interested in actually getting informed about what was going on, because some clients, they just don't care. They are not interested at all. And some clients, you can go really deep and explain to them why are things happening or why should things go this way to have their site improved.
So that's an interesting point, because I think that the clients because I deal with a lot of clients who also don't care. But sometimes, in my opinion, those can be the trickiest ones, because what they do care about is the bill, right? Like, you fix the problem, now they see the bill. And because they often don't care about the source of the issue or learning more about its context, they kind of have this knee-jerk reaction to why was this so expensive to fix? And those are interesting situations to handle. What I try to do is basically loop things back around in a context that they will understand. So in the business world, time is money. And so I will often try to frame things like, look, we fixed this in a way that is permanent. It's not just a Band-Aid. And this is going to benefit you in the long run because it's not going to break again, or it's going to alleviate XYZ issues you initially came to us about. And again, in a world where time is money, this should matter to you. So yes, you're paying for this now, but the idea at least is that you're not going to have to pay for it again and again and again.
Absolutely. And I also try to think that when communicating with that client, the client and the stakeholder aren't always the same person necessarily. I try to make sure that's clear up front who the decision makers are and who's going to be signing off on work, because I think we've all been in that situation where someone goes, oh, I like this, but my boss doesn't, so we have to redo it. But there are those times where, someone will say, my boss told me, again, my example, my boss told me that the shopping cart isn't working properly. Can you fix this? And that person, again, is doing something completely different. They aren't necessarily the client, to me, even if they're the one who I'm communicating with. So there are times where I could consider the person who I'm directly communicating with isn't the person who wants to know or cares to know. That's not part of their job. This isn't always the case. Usually clients want to know these things, but I can also understand that sometimes the person who I'm speaking to isn't the one who wants the end results.
Those are tricky, because I have found in my experience that there is a definite delineation between something not working and something not working the way someone wants it to, right? And so when you're kind of talking by proxy through somebody, sometimes those details don't come out until a little further down the path, and that can be tricky.
Absolutely.
How do you navigate that? How do you decide? Are there tricks and techniques you can use to try to get to that root cause, or however you want, quicker in a new relationship?
Well, there's always the CC field on email, so you can just kind of talk to everybody at once. But jokes aside, I will. It kind of depends on the client relationship, honestly. I think it's really case by case. There have been plenty of times where I've suggested, hey, let's have a group call to talk through everything. Yeah, I don't know. I don't think I have a good solid answer for that one. I really take it case by case.
And I think money talks in a lot of the situations. When somebody's asking you to do implement some functionality that maybe doesn't work perfectly or exactly how they want it, but maybe it's possible to make it work exactly how they want, but it's going to take 10x of amount of effort, then you can tell them right away, okay, if you really want to work it like the way you want it, okay, it's going to cost this much. Mm-hmm. So they might be okay with just the bare minimum.
Yeah, that's a fair point. I think I've definitely come across situations where the client wants XYZ in the entire sky and stars and moon, but they only have the budget for maybe the stars or something. And balancing what they might want and what they can afford is part of the tricky equation of figuring out how to improve a site and also get the client what they need, right? So how do you navigate that a little bit? Sometimes you might have to start in one place, but you want to get somewhere else. How do you figure out the best way to communicate that to the client and, figure out that plan to continually improve and continually make something better, even if you can't start off like that in the beginning?
We usually ask them about their goals. What are they trying to accomplish? What's the main thing this website needs to do for them, or whatever we are developing? And if they're asking something, when we start out talking about goals, that helps frame the conversation with the customer and gets them thinking about, okay, I need to accomplish A, and these are all the steps I need to take to get there. So, and all these other things they might be thinking about doesn't matter. So let's not worry about it. Let's not spend any effort on it.
Yeah, and you also said, two things. You said, what does the client want and what does the client need? And that's something that we definitely need to define with our clients. Normally, I try to define it with them based on their own clientele. So what are the things that would make your website bring in more money for you? That's usually why they're hiring me. So, I want a high performance sports vehicle. I need the vehicle that has enough room to fit my family and my dogs and, whatever other thing we need to do and is energy efficient and all of that. Those two things can be very different.
Yeah, they're interesting conversations to have. And I try to sometimes use like humor, honestly, to kind of punch through to conclusions, or I'll use funny analogies to try to like just make things more relatable. One that I used recently was a client had, as you say, Aurooba, like the whole galaxy in mind for what they wanted for their site, just everything, right? Sky was the limit. And the way that I ended up kind of getting through to them was having them try to think about their website like a piece of property. It's like, imagine if you buy some massive mansion in Beverly Hills, right? Well, now you need somebody to mow all the grass. You need somebody to tend to the grounds. Since you have 5 kitchens, you need those stocked all the time. So it's like, with more capability, more space, more room, however you want to kind of phrase it or think of it, it's more to manage. And sometimes I have clients do that where they're not really thinking about the after effect of like, what do we need to do to manage this? And if you can bring that into the conversation, it's just a good level setting topic to help them kind of realize that. And a lot of the times they'll change their course or their views a little bit. And then, like I said, humor, sometimes if you just point out to someone that they have champagne taste, but a box wine budget, they'll get a chuckle out of it and be like, all right, I get it. Let's regroup here.
Yeah, I think these real life analogies are like the ones that click easiest for people. Because if you go technical, some of them will just block because like, I don't know, I'm not interested, whatever. But when you can tie it to like a real life example, like Ellis just mentioned, then I think it's much easier for a client to comprehend what's going on actually.
I think that makes a lot of sense. One of my favorite analogies is basically the house. I'll talk about, the bones, the drywall, the paint, and the furniture, and how that sort of relates to making a website better or different. And that often gets through for a lot of people as well.
Yeah.
How often would you say y'all take user feedback into the process? And something that David brought up that was really interesting to me is it's not just about what your client wants, but what their clients or customers want, right? Because they're ultimately trying to make money off of this website, or it's a core part of their business in some way, and you're trying to help them improve this because that's going to help them ideally improve ROI for their own business. So how do you work that into the conversation? And has that ever been something that helped you make your own case before for doing something that maybe the client didn't understand?
I have one client in particular that I'm thinking of that I was focusing on building the front end of the website for this client, mainly focusing on taking content that they already had and rearranging it in a new way, refreshing the website, things like that. But during discussions that I had with the client, it was clear when I was trying to show them, oh, here's how we'll go and edit these things. Here's how we'll add a new page, et cetera. It became very clear that the client themselves, they were not the ones who were going to be managing the website. They actually had someone, I believe it was a secretary, who was going to be doing the majority of the work. And that work that they were going to be doing was adding in a new job to the job page when they had them, adding in an RFP when they had a new one, adding in investor meeting minutes, things like that. So something that I did to help improve it for them while they wanted to make changes to the website was I made basically a dashboard of sorts, just something that went onto the WP admin dashboard, and it just had buttons on it that said, add new RFP, add new job, etc. And of course, these were just links that would go to the proper create post page on the site. But I put it front and center so that the person who was going to be going in 90% of what they were going to do on a day-to-day basis, they could just click, one of these 4 or 5 buttons and go to the direct page and just start working. So it's something that didn't really add much to the site in terms of special functionality, or didn't add anything like you couldn't notice it on the front end, but it saved a lot of time for somebody who was not familiar with WordPress and, didn't have any reason to look at all of the other different features that it had. They just wanted to go in and add their content.
That makes sense. I think that improving the UI in this way, you really did help the main client as well, because by making it faster for their assistant to input the content means that they can also then go on and do other things that are beneficial for the business. Are there other types of user feedback or user improvements that have ever been part of performance or just general site improvements that have come up in projects? Because I think, the admin experience is not directly connected to performance, but it can sometimes be a part of improving performance.
Yeah, on my end, we've done a number of things. In terms of getting user feedback so that we can be informed on any sort of planning and change we're going to do to a site. We've run usability studies before where we, it's like the digital form of like, did you find everything you were looking for today, right? Like, those little chat bubble service. So we've done those, and they can actually be very insightful. They at least can help you get like clues to like pry into other things more deeply and figure out what's important to users. You bring up an interesting point though with the backend admin experience, because I'm finding that coming up a lot. If you think of a WordPress site where you've got a boatload of plugins installed, you're going to have a pretty wild admin experience with all these menu items and everything. And I'm finding that that's becoming more and more important, especially because a lot of our clients, at least, have more than one admin. So multiple people are going into the site to do their specific tasks. And some of the things we've done that have really helped there are limiting, like basically creating custom admin roles so that people are limited to just what they have to deal with and not any peripheral distractions. But then also improving the back-end like admin column experience for like post types and things like that, so that somebody's not looking at just a generic list of posts, but instead they're looking at column data around those posts. It just helps them orient a little bit better and work faster. So, that's one of those things where it's not a literal like measured performance speed metric, but it's it's like a felt speed issue to the person who's in the driver's seat, so to speak, and working in the admin.
Totally. I think especially with the block editor, as that became a bigger and bigger part of the conversation, that has shifted a lot of the attention to making sure that performance and improvements aren't just for the front end, but they're also for that back end admin experience. Because just like you said, you often have sites that have more than one admin. And when you have more than one admin, there's also more chances of things going wrong accidentally. Mm-hmm. Is that something that you have dealt a lot with, Sergey, recently? Has that come up for you as well as a trend?
Yeah, I mean, usually, it really comes up for new websites we develop. And, in the past, we would, when we build a website, after we build it, then we invite the client to give them admin access and let them edit it. And what we found that a lot of times they run into issues, a lot of times they start managing it and discover, various problems with it, or, something they thought they want to build one way, and it turns out they want to build something different. So now we've changed our process in the last few years. So now we actually invite admins on the client side to access the backend as we are building the website. So they can see what we are doing, and they can provide us feedback right there, because since they'll be the one using the site every day and making content changes every day, we want to make sure that they're very comfortable with it, and they can also help us basically QA the website as we're building it. And for existing websites that come to us, if you take over the management, the issue that comes out that's kind of recurring theme in this conversation is the number of plugins used, and how many unnecessary plugins are used on the website. I can tell you we've had many customers that come to us that they need a slider and they install like 5 different slider plugins. Because of that, they never know, where to go to edit the slide. So simplifying the backend interface is definitely key. Limiting roles is a very good idea. Because the one thing we consistently come up against is that customers that have complete admin access, they'll install plugins themselves and then either break the website or cause performance issues or cause a number of issues, and they come running into us and say, "Oh, what happened?" And so we have to scramble and fix those issues. So in a lot of cases, we want to try and limit that access.
100%. Jessica, recently in your work life, you've been working on empowering people to create and do more inside the admin for their websites, right? To make it easier for them to change things as well and customize things. So when you're thinking about performance and all these things that Sergey is talking about, how do you find that? What is a good way for you to balance that when you're offering this to your customers or clients, where they can improve and customize things, but also not break things as they go playing in the environment?
I think that's a really tough topic, because when you offer the more options and possibilities you offer, the more things can go wrong potentially. And I think education at this point is the key thing for the client if they take off with their website. So as Sergey mentioned before, bringing the client on in the process, I think is a quite important one, because then they kind of follow you along how you're building up their site or improving their site. And so they learn already, what are the best practices? What can you do to not do things the wrong way? And I think generally just having helpful documentation how to do things is a good key start. But obviously clients will try everything they can do the more options you offer them.
That makes a lot of sense. And I think that finding that balance between limiting things and also offering flexibility, like all of you have been saying, is so hard to strike as a balance, and it differs from every client and every project. So if you had to give one piece of advice to your fellow devs and business people working with these kinds of situations, what would it be when they encounter, as they inevitably will in their career, a site that they did not build, that was built poorly and needs to be improved for a variety of different reasons, but particularly performance? Who wants to go first?
I'll start. I have something in mind. One thing that we've talked about a lot is how to improve performance on things that we notice, as the developers. But one nice thing about coming into a site that already exists is that you can kind of let the client take the wheel a little bit in determining what needs to get done. So, we have the experience and the understanding to see, well, here's all the things you might not have noticed that, need to be improved. But if somebody is coming to pay me money to work on their website, they probably have a nice long list of things that they want done already, that they notice are broken, that they want to improve or add, et cetera. So that gives me a good place to start where I can determine, which of these things can I accomplish most easily, that I can quickly show them, some quick wins, give them more confidence, give them a better understanding of how we're going to work together.
I'll go next. I think my advice would be, don't just be a yes man or a yes woman, whatever you want to call it. And what I mean by that is clients are always going to ask for all kinds of things. And I feel like as the strategists and technologists who are guiding them, you always need to be able to draw a line between what they're asking for and what you're going to build and delivered business value for them. And if you can't figure that equation out, then you shouldn't just say yes and start developing. You need to pause, regroup, and figure that part of the equation out, because it's going to be what your client feels in the end. And so that's what I'll go with.
I can go next. I think I would educate the clients specifically about hosting. It comes up again and again and again that clients need to understand that you get what you pay for with hosting. So if they want to perform the website, make sure it runs on a performant WordPress optimized hosting platform.
Yeah, and I think I would my advice would be, when a client comes to you with a really bad website, just don't blame them or make them feel bad about their previous decisions, whom they hired, whatever, and just see it as an opportunity to educate and help them with their needs, what they have. And I think this is also then playing into building trust and seeing, okay, this is actually worth the money. If I go to a person that actually is not blaming me for anything, but really tries to help me and improve my website, and at the end of the day, my business as well.
Totally. So I love how this conversation has gone. What I've really heard here is that as technologists, as developers, as folks who work with clients, yes, part of our jobs is to sling code and improve things on a technical level, but it's also about understanding what the client actually needs and thinking a little more higher level and doing so with some empathy and maybe some, business ease as well, a little bit. And I think that is such an important part because yes, it's about performance, but it's also about how is that performance even beneficial? And that has come out so much in this conversation. And I've so appreciated talking to all of you and learning from you. And I hope that you had as much fun as I did. And thank you so much for joining us today.